Blessings. I am Heather Ann Ferri, and if you're new to my channel, some describe me as a healer, an author, a speaker, an educator, a dancer, a singer, a poet, and the list goes on. The subject matter today is very dear to my heart. What do Candace Owens and the women in the Keepers documentary have in common? So we're hearing a lot about Candace Owens online right now, and I'm never one to follow the mainstream. I'm always disrupting psychology and systems. And so today goes into the heart and soul of what I see happening and what we might be missing as far as the religious or spiritual teachings that's right in front of our face. So thank you for joining me. I have my notes and I have some videos I'm going to show briefly to sort of connect these dots of why I'm so passionate about these women. You know, whether you agree with everything they say or not, you have to respect the intentions behind their heart and soul and what they're investigating. So at first glance, you know, they live different lives. Candace Owens is a public figure and she's navigating through politics and grief, while the women in The Keepers are ordinary citizens who turn into investigators. Yet they share something profound. Both stepped into roles traditionally held by men who were cops and detectives because the truth demanded it. Candace Owens has faced ridicule for grieving openly, for asking hard questions, and for refusing to stay silent. That lioness energy, that fierce, protective, unwilling to bow to shame, is the divine feminine rising. It is the same energy I see in the women of The Keepers, who refused to let victims be forgotten and carried the burden of investigation when institutions failed. Their persistence echoes the spirit of Jesus, risking everything to protect the vulnerable and confront corruption. This is one of the reasons why I wrote Transcending Victim to Goddess. And if you follow me, especially on social media sites like Facebook, I'm posting interviews, and the topic of the word victim and the topic of the word goddess is coming up a lot. And there are important conversations to be had. I speak about the Keepers documentary. It is on page, I believe, 103, and I speak about Sister Catherine Kesnick, who was murdered. This came onto my feed back in 2015. And I'm going to show you not only a picture of me at her burial ground, because she was originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, but she worked in a school in Baltimore. But I'm also going to share with you just a little clip of where you can see, I think it's on Netflix, the series, The Keepers. I want to forewarn you, this is a hard documentary to watch. So if you have been sexually abused or have suffered a lot of abuse in general, it may not be something for you to watch. What I appreciate about this documentary, I began my studies in a lot of realms with trauma, with victims and predators, is it is dark. Working with trauma is very heavy and very dark. And evil can make you chill just like the light can make you chill. So what I like is they're capturing the truth of how dark this is. This is a documentary for our new earth leaders. This is a documentary for our business leaders to have conversations about more advanced protocols to heal the roots of generational traumas carried through the bloodline, as well as this life of sexual abuse. And that is why this is the first of a 4-part series. So let me begin. I'm not going to play a lot of video because the sound is not great, but like I said again, you can watch The Keepers. But I want to forewarn, it's really dark. There are a lot more documentaries coming out about abuse in the church, both in Catholic religion and Christian religion. The Keepers is very specific with Catholic, which you'll see. One of the other documentaries that I'm going to be reviewing in the next couple weeks, you will not see on the mainstream Netflix channels. You have to purchase it, but it's called Nuns and the Vatican. And so this is great. There are filmmakers, there are producers, and there are people stepping into addressing what has been thrown under the table for way too long. This is the only way we clean up the roots of both spirituality and religion to get back to sacred land. And so, you know, I give the victims, as I know it's been so hard to heal so many layers and come out, I give the victims so much. They're so brave and they're so courageous, but I also want to protect them and say, please make sure you are healing and not running on those cortisones of fight flight. Make sure you are going with a trauma expert, getting into retreat programs, my retreat programs, my workshops, so that you can rewire the brain and you don't have to carry this on. Because if there's one thing I know, we die with our consciousness. So there's no escaping what you are, who you are, and what you do in this life. The great news is if you found this video, you're probably a New Earth leader, a New Earth healer, or somebody who's just ready to step into deeper spiritual healing that's practical and advanced mystical, to be a representation for yourself. This is about self-love for this little child, this little girl. And these documentaries and these women are coming out and asking important questions. Questions that we never had an opportunity to have platforms before. So I want to show those two things, and then I want to make a comment about, okay. Let's see what we got. So the picture I want to show you, Sister Catherine Kesnick, this is in Fox Chapel, Pittsburgh, PA. And this is 10 years ago. I look quite different, as you can see. My whole body is inflamed. My head is actually shaped differently, as you can see. My hips are out of alignment. I'm in PTSD. But I wrote a poem that's in my book. It's on page 103, dedicated to Sister Catherine Kesnick. So this is about transcending victim to goddess. Netflix. Let's see if I can move this. The Keepers will banish whatever institutional faith you may have left. If you are a huge part of the church, Catholic or Christian, there are some deep questions you're going to have to ask as far as your church and restructuring. But for me personally, there's a lot, there are very few people that I've come across in my trauma practice of 15 years that haven't had this or this in their family. This is, in essence, a pandemic. This goes into the documentary. What's brilliant about these two women is basically, this happened 50 years ago. So basically, they were not abused in their school system. but the murder case was never solved. And something was not right in their soul. And they started an investigation. And it's honestly, it's quite inspiring. If you're sitting there and you're lost in life and you don't think, like, there is so much empowerment, writing, meditating, stepping into something that you don't like. These women are my heroes. And what they discover is they don't just discover that there is a tribe probably involved in knowing about the murder of Sister Catherine Kesnick, but they start to discover that a lot of their students were brutally sexually abused, psychologically abused. Talk about the power of following your gut, your intuition. Talk about the power of following your heart. Sister Catherine Kesnick's murder lives, her energy lives on. You can't erase it. Just like on some of my videos, you see Anastasia with the mask on. That's a whole other series. You can't erase it. You can't lie and put this whole little scenario of what it was about, because I healed her inside my body and soul and mind. And I know what went down in that scenario. We're going to have to get past the analytical mind. If you're a Jesus follower, you're going to have to tap into your soul and meditation spirit to understand that nothing is black and white. So you can read about this. I'm not sure if you're going to hear this properly, but let me see if I can play it.
The authority. Whatever they told you to do, you did.
The city has its level of corruption. Sister Kathy exemplified this spirit of compassion and kindness.
I have never had a teacher like that before. She was murdered our senior year, and it's always haunted many people in the community. Our mission, we were driven to find out who hurt Sister Kathy. People pop up from 45, 50 years ago who say, I have a story I'd like to tell you.
I believe Patty Sesnick was killed because she was going to talk about what went on at camp.
There's an on-the-record public story of what happened to Sister Kathy. Then there's the world beneath.
The police department and the state could provide protection for the priest.
There were other people brought in, local business owners, politicians that were part of this network.
I can testify that over 100 victims have been abused. Time is getting short for us to be able to figure out what happened to Kathy.
My father said to my mother, you want to know why I drink? Because we killed a woman and we put her behind the shop. He said, see what happens when you say bad things about people?
This goes bigger and deeper than we can imagine. The story is not the nuns killing. The story is the cover-up of the nun story.
It runs so deep because on my cover, this outfit is my Catholic confirmation outfit. And as I start to dig deeper and deeper after my father passed away in 2022, I knew that organized religion was the root of both my parents' traumas. If you are a churchgoer and you feel your church is great, great. But I'm somebody that has experienced really life-threatening trauma as a child and have worked with so many women. And I ask questions everywhere I go. People confess, you know. I go into this in book 2 where I'm sitting across from predators. And I don't even know they're a part of predatory in my bloodline, but there's this common theme of lying. There's this common theme of cover up, of blame. And it doesn't matter how much compassion you have for them, it's there. I think a lot of times online, because we see the empath and the healer and the spiritual counselor so beautiful and loving, and yes, that is a huge part of who I am. But make no mistake, when you start channeling what I call the Divine Mother, and she starts hearing those lies, she will bring out the lioness, like in those two women and like Candace Owens. Where are the lions? It's a question. Now I know men are sexually abused in churches and in family systems as well. You know, I didn't follow social media up until COVID, really. Very little at all. And I realized after watching Candace Owens yesterday, I've been following her since her best friend was executed in front of us. I realized every now and then I would watch her in the last 5 years, but it wasn't because I was interested in politics. I realize now that there's a great spiritual and religious teaching that Candace Owens holds for us. I realized I was drawn to her and Charlie because you can see right now when you watch her videos, the pain, the love, and the passion she has for her friend. Having gone through so much betrayal, I remember when I first heard on the social media what had happened to Angelic Charlie. And I right away went to listen to Candace Owens. Why wouldn't you? She was his best friend. That's the best place to go for resources and reports, not the corruption sites. And I did post something under her saying, I hope in my lifetime I get to experience once, if I'm lucky, a best friend in the manner that you are. Because as you will read in my books, which will give you inspiration, through against all odds, I have to continue to love myself, even though people are disappointing, even though I'm unraveling and seeing things from a different light and point of view. I'm learning that sometimes the greatest love is deleting and detaching and walking away. I want you to, I'm not here to promote Candace. I'm actually here to promote that if you're somebody that's never had that, and a lot of victims haven't, they've been betrayed by family, they've been betrayed by the community, this is common. Go watch a few of her videos to see what it's like, what it feels like, what it hears to have somebody go to bat, risk their life, risk every dime they have for their best friend. And you'll get a great teaching from it, as I have. And deep gratitude. You don't have to agree with every point of view, but can you imagine the grief of watching your best friend that you've spent every day with, the text messages she's sharing the real relationship she had, not just the glamorous side of, we had success, we made money for this organization. Something I wrote here, Her grief after losing her best friend and her refusal to stop asking questions. Like, I've worked with so many victims, including myself. We get thrown under the bus, man. I mean, nobody asked us a little, we'll be lucky if we get a few questions and then it's like, get better, you know? And to have somebody show up every day, even though she's in pain and she's tired, that's the teachings of Jesus. You don't have to go into a book. So her refusal to stop asking questions reminds me of the sacred energy Jesus carried, confronting corruption, protecting the vulnerable, and honoring truth even when shamed. Likewise, the two women detectives in The Keepers echo that same spirit, risking everything to defend others. This is why I wrote Transcending Victim to Goddess. On the cover, I stand, like they said, in my Catholic confirmation dress. I'm reminded of how scripture was once used as a weapon against me by my mother, by business programs, by systems that twisted scripture into control. And what Candace is breaking down right now, especially in her last video yesterday, is she's breaking down how the predator works in the main systems to cover up violence and evil and then call it, we're moving on. We honor somebody, but we're not really honoring it. It's a show. They did the same with Sister Catherine Keswick. They do the same with so many others. And I've worked with so many who have suffered despite their devotion. I've worked with serious religious women, actually, when I look back. And when any of these women came sick and troubled, they were devoted to the Bible, yet still suffering. They would compare me sometimes to David or Jesus, even though I never read the book daily. That contrast revealed something important to me. There is more to the story of why Jesus was murdered. And until we face those truths, the roots of disrespect for children and women will continue to show up everywhere. The Jesus I know was never meant to be a scapegoat. That energy was about protecting children and honoring women as sacred, introducing the word goddess, a divine sacred woman. These women are sacred. They're strong. And they may think, Candace may think she's young because she doesn't fit in. I know the same feeling, but she's ancient and probably given this assignment. You gotta have a lot of toolkits there to be able to move through this corruption. And she's going to grow probably and change just like I continue to grow and change. But you got to give her credit. I mean, can you look at your life and honestly say that there's somebody in your life that would do this to this extent for you? I don't have anyone. That's why I had to continue when my father died to delete and heal and release. And that's why I really want to work with the healers and the spiritual teachers and the social workers, because they take on so much and it sort of becomes a pattern and they forget about themselves. And they forget about themselves in a way that they deserve to continue to heal, to continue to upgrade, to continue to experienced life where they're not taking on, it's heavy stuff. You know, even being in an ER, I'm not crazy about medical systems, but I think the ER is an incredible like emergency. We've got the best emergency system in America. And those people need PTSD brain protocol, as well as other things to keep them healthy. So when I say like the whole thing with Jesus, I think until we face the truth of that energy's execution and stop using that energy's name as an excuse for harm, we will continue to ignore victims and minimize predators. Whether in politics or documentaries, we are witnessing women embody the divine feminine, investigators, protectors, truth tellers. This is not about replacing men. It's about balancing out energies, bringing compassion and courage into spaces where silence was once reigned. So I want to show you a clip that's happened in the last 24 hours in New York City. This is one of probably thousands of clips if I took the time to show you. This is an endless issue. It's not just in my neighborhood. It's not just in my storyline. It's just now we have to address it face on. And it is the issue that happened in New York City where one of the girls was assaulted on the street, which is not uncommon. She was assaulted and somebody videotaped a little bit. And I just want to play a little bit of a clip of this. You know, I still have an old video here of one of my clients years ago. It's an interview that Remington did on my channel. And, you know, she was from Russia and she was assaulted on the street, but it was from her tribe. They beat her up because you can't question, you can't talk about certain things. So I know this really, really well. And she was very serious religious, like Bible every day. And yeah, go look up her interview on my channel. And it might be under the generational trauma leadership stuff. But she was a hard client because she was extremely OCD and rigid. But she did her homework. Like she was good in that sense, but she didn't like sometimes because there was some narcissist personality disorder there. She didn't like sometimes me pushing her buttons. And I remember there was one time, this is coming up, I was just going to say, we should part, like, this isn't going to work. We're not a fit. And and this was early on in my trauma career. So this was a hard thing to do, right? And I went into the studio. This is when I was renting a studio at the time, a yoga studio, and I'm getting ready to do this. This is a big deal. And she comes in and her energy was a little lighter, a little softer because she was very hard. And she apologized to me for her behavior the week before, which was a shocker. And I said, okay. And she said, yeah, I went home. I was very upset at what you were questioning and asking me. And then I went and prayed and I opened up my Bible to David and Goliath. And she said, no, I trust you. You're pushing me. And really, you know, I really admire her for having the grace to surrender her ego, because what happened in those 3 months of doing OCD and PTSD and childhood trauma brain protocol is she stopped yelling at her kids. And they thanked me. So we need different types of programs. Somebody just asked me on a podcast, who's your audience? All those people from the keepers that were brutally abused. Who's your audience? I'm going to show you the clip of who's my audience in another story. So you can look this up. I'm just going to show you a moment of it. I'm very impressed with Megyn Kelly that she used her power to make phone calls in New York City to dig deeper. There's a couple bullet points I want to mention about this.
I really wanted to bring awareness to the stuff that has been happening to young women in New York City. I've heard so many stories, and on my TikTok I say, I never thought that this would happen to me, but it's really sad. This is something that happens all the time in New York, and I really want to make sure and use my voice to raise awareness and help other girls stay protected, and also help other girls that have maybe gone through the same experience as I.
That's why I wrote Transcending Victim to Goddess. So what reminds me when I see that little clip is they go into, obviously they did catch the 45-year-old gentleman, and he has a record. He has a record. Sexual assault, rape, sexual assault, you're in jail. I mean, this is science. I studied this once I started watching The Keepers. You know, I talked briefly about being stalked, which is in book 2. I get the name of my stalker when I can't get a restraining order because the judge throws me on the street because the tribe supports the tribe. And I looked up his name, and he had moved from apartment to apartment every year. That's strange behavioral patterns. You know, there are some of us that are so old, we're old souls here, that we cannot be dumbed down, that we've come here to bring all of this to the surface. Systems have to change. I remember early on in my yogic meditation career when I wrote my first book, somehow the college girls were finding out about it. I don't remember how. And a lot of them were raped in college. And they didn't share it with their parents because there were all these different issues. And that's the other thing, parents, like, you got to wake up. It's the hardest job on planet Earth. And if you're going to have a child, it's your responsibility to know this stuff and to protect them. I mean, I remember way back telling my brother that my nieces need to get into martial arts and self-defense. Not self-defense just in strength. I mean psychology. And at first he fluffed it off until I brought in a Time magazine with all the college rapes going on and was like, look, the stats are here. You're a stats guy. It's right in front of your face. Are you going to see it? You know, and we can't turn a blind eye anymore. We can't actually. We're in a time period in the dark ages moving through this. This is going to get ugly for a lot of people who haven't done any inner work, who have denied and not looked at the fact that they were a predator or a victim. And for us that have done the work, we're here to say, these are the new systems. Go do the work. This is how it's going to be. This is how it works, you know? And so this would be a great bridge to go into universities with these young women and men being assaulted, because it's not just about the women being assaulted, because I know boys are too, but it's about how do we build men with my father's download on the back. And you might say, I don't understand a download or a channel. Well, when you start to learn breath work, I'm sure, you know, and meditation work, you go inside and you start to clear out all the programs and systems that were teaching you. And this is how you navigate. You know, I can see we and Candace Owens come from very different worlds, but I can see some similarity threads. You know, she doesn't know why she's investigating something. She's led to it. I'm the same way when you get to book 2. I don't know. At one point, the Divine Mother literally places me in a situation, and I'm asking this, like, because it's corrupted. And because she needs an ancient healer, leader, to understand why this system is corrupted. Because most people too stressed out, running around in circles, wouldn't even know where to begin to even understand this stuff, and maybe feel disempowered, follow their followers. And it's not a judgment, it just is. And you walk around, you say, why can't anybody else see this stuff happening? How many times do we have to see the Keepers documentary happening in our neighborhoods, hearing, and not say, why does this keep happening? These are questions that new earth leaders and healers need to sit at a table privately and bounce off of, and then start incorporating. You know, I love right now in my life, you know what brings me joy is singing and dancing from a very, very primal, different place. But I had to come on today and voice this because I have way too much experience, way too much in my body, knowing that I don't want to live in a culture where everywhere I go, people are traumatized. They can't think for themselves. They're drinking pop, or they're still wearing a mask, which is not a judgment, but it's kind of like, that's another video. You know, how is that protecting you at this point? Where is that fear-based coming from? How did your doctor teach you that that's a safety mechanism? You know, things like that. So I really relate to her bravery and her ability to navigate through such devastation. I'm glad she's taking time off, and honestly, she needs to take a lot more time off at some point and just be with her family and really make sure that she's releasing this grief. I'm glad she's crying. These are things we need to hear. When somebody puts you on a platform, this is when you know you have a red flag, and it's not a judgment. I noted it in my last video with another church thing where girls, you know, you can watch that video. But when somebody goes through a serious devastation, like like your loved one is killed, and the next day you forgive, and the next day you're president of a company, you are not processing what happened. You are setting an example of what? The shadow, masculine, even if you're not conscious of it. And if you love somebody, if somebody was really in that person's corner, they would say, take 3 months off, grieve, get your kids grounded. Because the people at B don't care. They want you in fight flight, so that your cortisone levels are running and you're forming cancers, and you know, you're their puppet. Because it's not realistic to go from one to the next in a day. And this is what we're always taught in these crises online. And we have to stop and start questioning why. And I think a lot of people are. I work with angels. I work with divine beings on the other side. And so new people will come up on my social media. I'll watch them for a month or two. I'll delete. New people will come up. That's how I work. It's not personal. It just is. If I comment, sometimes it's my angel commenting to them. You know, I don't care if they believe me or not. Doesn't matter. I'm still doing the job, right? And it's an interesting dance, you know, to see what comes up on the feed, what doesn't come up on the feed. Something's coming. Sometimes I watch things just to read the comments, to see where is the public at with this. And what I see right now is that Candace Owens is teaching us all to look at our own lives and be accountable for our relationships with people. For me, as I move forward and attract new people into my life, I'm going to pay more attention to some subtle details, because I would love to have an experience that she had with her best friend. And I think it's possible for all of us, but it may take some bravery and assessing our environment and asking, can I be that best friend? Could you do what she's doing right now? And be honest, because I don't know many people that can't. It's not a judgment. It's just an awareness. I can. I've put a lot of stuff out there recently about things that people probably don't understand, and that's okay. They don't need to, but I still have to put it out there. I want to make sure I've mentioned everything for this video today. I think one of the other teachings that Candace is providing through her vulnerability, good days, bad days, great days, is I had somebody come on my feed that honestly I would never follow, I don't watch, but it came on for a reason. I watched a little bit. Somebody that was very focused on this government in a good way, like this is our game-changing government. And through just watching about 5 minutes of the video, he was very teary-eyed and said, I'm grieving because of what's happening right now. I have a lot of questions and I have a lot of feelings that what I thought was going to be good is not good. I think if anything has happened, you know, one of Candace's videos, she talked about being that young, innocent. Me and Charlie wanted to change the government. We wanted to, I think they are. They're just doing it with him as an angel and her in physical form. I think we're all not considering right side or left side anymore. You know, they've talked recently about adding a third term for presidencies and so may come back. We got to let them all go gracefully. We just got to let them all go. We're going to need something very, very different. And I think that this is the awakening of that, because it's not going to change right, left, same people, different masks. So I'm going to finish with this. I ask you this question, and I've asked it to myself, as you can probably tell. Who in your life would defend you in your darkest hour? Get a pen out. Write about it. And would you do the same for them? If the answer is no, it's another reason why you might want to consider buying my book on Amazon and reading and doing the self-love care after each chapter. Meditations are introduced. Breath psychology with breath work is introduced, and 133 questions. Maybe there's 2 or 3 that really get the wheels turning. Read the stories and the way they're presented in a way that maybe you never thought about storytelling. Because if there's one thing I've learned from my private coaching is people have stories. People have stories, and they matter. I think that's it for today. Thank you if you have listened to the whole video. If something was triggering to you, I've been there. I would just suggest writing and reflecting. This is my truth, and I stand behind this truth of what I voiced today. I'm very passionate about moving forward and sharing programs and music and dance and love, but I still have to voice these dark things because I don't want to live in the dark ages. So for Candace Owens, I will continue to send prayers, unconditional love, and support for you. And for the women and the keepers who continue, even though there hasn't been justice for a lot of these people who were victims. You demonstrate the passion that one teacher can have on a school. And for Megan Kelly, who is using her power to protect young women on the street and get investigations, we have to consider, why do we keep these small sentences? We have to change what's in front of our face that needs to be changed. Many blessings.